walls in the basement. And the 70 elders of Israel, the leaders of Israel, are down there practicing the secret rite, saying God does not see what we do here. God doesn't see us. It's in secret. I want to tell you, God knows the secret places. There is no secret God doesn't know. He knew everything that went on in that room, in that basement of that temple. And they did too. They got the serpent still on the walls here in 1981, right there in Washington, D.C. It changed not. And they had the book that tells them. And he says, is this a light thing that they do? This abomination of the elders of Israel? He says, let's look further and see the abominations. He takes them up, and here's the women weeping for Tammuz, weeping for Christmas. I want to tell you what, you tell people under conviction, they got to give up Christmas. The guy says, fine. The kid says, oh, great, doesn't bother him. And we love so much. Oh, we've had such good time. And oh, what family's going to think? And what are we going to do? We can't invite them over, and they can't go over there. And the women have a terrible thing with Christmas. They really choke up on that one. Weeping for Tammuz. And it says, look what they do. They put the sprig, the evergreen, to the nose. Is that a light thing, God says to Ezekiel, that they do? He says, look further. Here are the 24 elders with their back to the temple, facing the rising sun. Facing Baal with their back to my temple. And then he sends the writer the inkhorn, and the four, and with the slaughter weapons in their hand. And he says, put a mark in all of Israel, of all of those who weep for the abominations that they do here. And all who do not have that mark on the forehead, slaughter, slay every one. Show mercy to none. And start with those 70 guys down to that temple. Get them first. Well, that's what God thought of it. Oh, but God is just a forgiving, good old daddy boy. Just kind of goes along with everything, doesn't he, huh? You haven't read his book. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. You see the black block? If you saw the movie 2001, do you see the black block there worshiping his God? You go in the United Nations building, you see the black God in the meditation room? You go over to Israel, and you see where they built this, for the books, the Dead Sea Scrolls, this temple. They got this thing, the double parabolic curve with a black block on the side for the entrance. If I had time, we'd go through the black block. You want to get some tapes, you can do that. We got kind of long. Again, up the 7 steps, that's the worshipful master, God with us. The supreme sovereign commander, 33rd degree, directly under the sunburst, the eagle, which is the emblem of Baal, the serpents, you see, on both sides, and trail of the serpents, and the black block. We see that black block in Mecca, the Kaaba. I'm down one day, and I will tell you something about false religions. Every false religion has a problem. This is one of the problems with all the modern translations of the Bible. They are contradictory internally. They are not consistent. This is the proof that the King James, one of the proofs of it, is the fact that it is the only Bible that is internally consistent. You see what happens when you start writing a false one, you change here, change there, but you can't change too much, it becomes too obvious. So what you do is change the major text and hope people don't understand the minor ones. But if a person really gets down and studies, he starts saying, wait a minute, this doesn't quite fit here. He has inconsistencies he cannot resolve. That's never true in the King James. There is total consistency from the very beginning to the end. Let's take a look here. One time I was in Atlanta, and we were having a little bite to eat Sunday afternoon, I had plenty of time, and just sitting around 4 or 5 of us guys jawing away. And I was telling them a little bit about Mohammedanism. And we had, as I say, we were just spending an afternoon wasting time. Not really. We were talking about things we thought were important. And the waitress came over after about an hour of this, and she said, sir, I want to apologize. I said, about what? She said, I've been listening to your conversation, and a good waitress never listens to the conversation of a customer. And she said, but I couldn't help it. I'm a Mohammedan in Atlanta, Georgia. And there are not many Mohammedans around, and when I heard you talk of Muhammad, I had to listen in. I said, that's quite all right. I said, Miss, could I ask you some questions? She said, yes. I said, now, would you say that Abraham was a prophet of God? Yes. Ishmael? Yes. Isaac? Yes. Jacob? Yes. David? Yes. Solomon? Yes. Christ? Yes. Muhammad? Yes. All of these men were prophets of God. Yes. Could they lie on spiritual matters? Well, no. That's not possible. Now, will you tell me who the greatest of all prophets? What do you think the answer is? Pardon? Jesus. Jesus of Nazareth is the greatest of all prophets. Did you know that's the Mohammedan position? Now I want to ask you a question. Was Abraham God? No. Isaac? No. Ishmael? No. Jacob? No. Was Solomon? No. David? No. Muhammad? No. Christ? She stops and looks at me. She said, was Christ God or not God? If Christ be God, Muhammad be a liar. If Muhammad is right, then Christ is not God and Christ is a liar. Now, you told me that Christ was the greatest of all prophets. And she sits there and she says, no man's ever talked to me like this. It's about time. I don't mean this with malice in my heart. I hope you understand. When I jump on something, I mean it. If possible, the Holy Spirit should bless it to your good. I have no other purpose of being here. All right. Those people marching 7 days around in that circle, you see them there? They marched for 7 days continuously around and around and around, chanting. And then they march out about 20 miles, out to the hills out there and back to the different shrines. And they have to do that once in their lifetime. This is the big thing, the trip to Mecca. Oh. The nudity, always for paganism. This is Zeus in the United Nations building. Here's that same black. Pops up again. The United Nations meditation room. 100,000 volumes of the different lodges of the world in the basement of this book we're building. We're not talking about a little club. We're talking about a massive organization with the threat of life and death over its membership. And secret extractions of oaths that are so abominable to our concept of justice and law, as well as Christian morality. Knight Templar magazine. This is the only copy I ever had of the Knight Templar. This is York, right? Let us thank God that in the days of religious wars, that's what the article's been about, long gone. And the spirit of cooperation and mutual appreciation has replaced antagonism and warfare among Christian bodies. The new word among churches in our days is ecumenism, which means the whole household of faith. That means let's all get together, non-sectarianism, all right? But let it be said to the everlasting glory of Masonry. Everlasting glory of Masonry. Here is a fraternity realizes that God is called by different names, by different peoples. Masonry was still in advance of the church in ecumenism. Masonry includes all believers in God, regardless of the name of their religion. What is the Lord saying? For this is the stone which is set in knot of ye masons, which has become the head of the corner. For there is none other name given amongst men under heaven whereby ye must be saved. What do they say? Any name, any religion, it makes no difference. Notice the direct opposition of the Word of God. In all cases, 180 degrees. In 1885, Rudyard Kipling was raised in Lahore India Lodge. And that's, by the way, that is one of the elite lodges. He said, I was entered by a Hindu, that's first degree, passed by a Muslim, second degree, raised by an Englishman, third degree, and the tiler, the keeper of the door, was a Jew. See, the Masons teach that the true religion is Masonry. All these others don't matter. Here again we have the degrees that the Scottish Rite that came from the Kabbalah. The 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 12th, 14th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 25th, 26th, 28th, 29th, and 32nd. Do you want to know whether Masonry is Jewish? Came out of the 8th book of the Talmud. Here we have the emblem in the occult given of Lucifer. The horn deity, the horn power, the torch of illumination, the 5-pointed star, which is the emblem also we'll see of him, the female breast, the male portion with the sunburst behind it and the serpent around it, the hooves, the eagle wing, the eagle being the emblem of Baal. And here we have this monstrosity. This is called the goat of Baphomet, symbol of Lucifer. We see the same thing in the 18th degree. With the red cross of the Rose Cross, by the way, the cross is not a Christian emblem. It's the Egyptian emblem of male fertility. All right? When you see it combined with a circle, you now have called the Ankh, the female and the male at the time of congenital conception. Here's Sir Winston joining in the Druids, which is the parent organization and founder of the Scottish Rite. The ancient order of the Druids, at least 2,500 years old. And Winston Churchill, 1908, as he said in his book, I've decided to join told his mother, I've decided to join the religion of reasonable men. I've joined the religion of Disraeli, the only Jewish Prime Minister of England, or at least openly Jewish, known to be Jewish. The occult magazine. See, you go to both. This is the 5-pointed star. Again, is the emblem of Lucifer. Let's go to Washington, D.C. Here we have the capital of the United States. Here's the Capitol building on Capitol Hill. Notice the lawns laid out and the 2 horns, the torch, the goat's head, the beard, and the compass, the ark, and the pinions. This is just a straight map. This is a standard old street map. No? Washington, D.C. This is the same street map. I just blew this part up here for you. Let's take a look at here. Here we have the horn, the beard, and in the beard, the White House. Coming out of the White House, we come down here to the woman, the leg, you see? And the male shaft of Washington sticking in that portion. We go to the American Tobacco, or the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Division of the Internal Revenue Service. And we'll notice something about this badge, which is on all their material. The badge number is 666, the mark of the beast. All right? The sunburst, the eagle, Lucifer, the hoodwinks, both corners, the square, the key, and the balance scale of works. Salvation by works. Let's take a look at your federal income tax. It's 1970 edition. I thought this was kind of interesting. Let's take a move in on the center of this and take a look at the top of that. What do we see? Now let's take a look and see what we see here. We'll turn that sideways. The goat of Baphomet, the horn, the torch, the goat's head, and the goat's feet stand on the shaft. And the sunburst, and the male phallus below that. Let's look in the corner. We're still on the same little particle. We see the emblem, the acacia leaf that marks Lucifer's mark, the branch, that leaf that's thrown in the mason's grave in the claim of the body. The clenched fist that the tail is in the form of, they shook their fist in the face of God, which forms the tail of the eagle, which is the emblem of Lucifer, called Baal, with the balance scale, which is the doctrine of works. We see things like this yin and the yang. Those of you who like acupuncture and this sort of thing, we get in yin and yang in. And the reason why you put those needles in, we've got to block a little yin, a little yang, so the chi can flow. The chi, the life force, got to flow through you every day, but you got to be balanced between the positive and the negatives, you see. And if you got a little too much yin, a little too much yang, then your yin and yang are out of balance. And if your yin and yang is out of base, then the chi can't flow. So we're going to put a needle in here and a needle in here. We're going to block a little yin here and a little yang there. And so we get your yin and yang in balance, and then the chi flows through and you're healthy. You understand that? That's Hinduism. All right, now. You think that's funny? Well, let's take a look at the yin and yang symbol in another form. It comes in many forms. Sometimes you'll see a line like this, and you'll see a picture of an old man, how he look like, and you'll be here, and you'll see an exact copy in black down here. I don't know if you've ever seen that symbol. We see it in another form. It's this way. It's not going to come out quite right, but you're going to have to bear with me because I've got some problems here. Mainly the problems I got is that it doesn't going to come out right. But anyway, this part here should be interlaced, neither touching, neither above the other. The emblem, one of the symbols for deity, is this symbol, the triangle. Now, this is the concept, and this is the concept, and this is the concept of Zoroastrianism, Parsaism, which is the duality of God, that there's a God of good and a God of evil, that both gods are equal in force and power, and that in every one of you, these two gods are warring, the God of good and the God of evil. You have both the God of good and the God of evil in every man. If we believe that, then we are all brothers spiritually. We all have good and bad, you see. But you see, for those who have the Christ dwelling within them, that's impossible. Believing that as it may, let's take a look and see what this doctrine says. What the doctrine here of Judaism or Talmudism says is this, that yes, Christ is God, Adonai. He is Typhon, the killer of Osiris. Adonai, or Christ, is the God of evil. He would have, thou shalt not, you can't do this, you can't do that. He would restrain you from developing your total natural being and for experience, all the experiences in which life can present to you. But the God of good, Lucifer, has no such restraints. You can do as you wish and please and develop yourself fully under Lucifer, the God of good. There is a war between these two. The God of evil would say, oh, you shan't do this and you are guilty. The God of good says, go ahead. Why not? Take your pleasure. If it feels good, do it. That's the doctrine of Judaism, of Zoroastrianism, the two godism. What does the Bible teach? Lucifer would be like the Most High. What's the problem with Lucifer? He isn't. If you got to run for the office, you haven't got it. Lucifer's big problem is he wants to pretend to be God and he isn't. And there's a big problem. He can't admit he isn't, or otherwise, if he runs for it, he's got to admit he's not. He's got to pretend to be. And therefore he is a deceiver. And he claims equality, but he has not. He's got a problem. He has limitations. Christ has none. But this doctrine is, this is not the seal, by the way, or symbol of David, the sign, what do they call it? The Star of David. That's not the Star of David. Look in your dictionary. What is in the Oxford Dictionary? What is it listed as? The Seal of Solomon. Why do they change the name? Why is everything concealed and never revealed? You see, these religions are all the same. Now, let me give you the doctrine and philosophy of the religion for just a minute. And by the way, I'd like to suggest to you, for those of you who want to do a very excellent study by a person who is most learned and is a book which is I Will Be Like the Most High, a set of tapes by Elder Conrad Gerald. And I am a little concerned. He has another set here which are super, and it's called God, Satan's Secret Orders, in which he first goes through philosophy. His background is philosophy. And he goes through the philosophy class. And he goes through the arguments of the existence of God. And then he will prove the existence of God from the point of view of philosophy. And then he will go through the nature of Lucifer, Satan, and his program. And then he will go into the secret orders. Very excellent if you want to get a view of much more depth than I'm going to be able to give you here today on these subjects. And as I say, he's well read in it. And one of the people in this world I feel have one of the keenest minds. And Conrad Gerald, in my estimation, is the finest scriptorian in the world today. I'm not saying there may be a better one. If so, I don't know of him. You know, as far as I know, he is the best. And one day I was talking to one, a very excellent preacher who hates Conrad's guts. And I know the reasons for it, but anyway. And we're driving along, and I said, I knew how he felt about Conrad. And he just can't get over it. And I said, well, I think Conrad is one of the finest scriptorians that I know of. Certainly one of the leading scriptorians. He looked at me and he said, trouble with Conrad, he is the world's best. And you know why nobody likes him? We know it. You can't get in a discussion with him and win. He doesn't beat you down by argument. It's just flip with me, flip with me, flip with me, rate it, rate it, rate it, rate it, rate it, rate it. You name the subject. Let's start out. Here. 27 places in the scripture. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You never saw a mind like this. Like a machine. It's the only thing he's good at. He can't earn a living. He couldn't turn a screw. He can't get a nut on a bolt. But when it comes to that book, every other thing he's absolutely incapable of doing. I've never seen a man. God does this with his people. He just makes it. He's tried to do everything else. He can't do it. There's one thing that he is called to do, and that is to know that book. I was out in California one time with one of the top so-called Bible scholars who's been lecturing for 60-some years. He's in his 80s. One of the sweetest, most lovable men. Sweet, lovable, and my friend for years, every way he talks to me, you know. Well known. Well, we were going out there, and Conrad was traveling along with me on a trip. And I had this little plane we're flying through. And so I picked up these couple of preachers down in Los Angeles, and we were going up to talk to him on it, because they wanted to talk on this doctrine of premillennialism with me along. And I told Conrad, I said, look, let's not get into any arguments. We just go up there and be sweet, smile all day. We'll come back home. It doesn't really make any difference anyway. No use getting in a hassle with these people. They're not going to change, and we certainly know better, so let's just leave it go. So anyway, we get there to this guy's place. All morning, lunch, everything, just sweet talk of everything but the Bible. He just kept them one nice story and a nice story, and just lovely. Finally, all of this time, he's picking away at Conrad, who was doing just as I told him, sitting there smiling, and just this nice, and Conrad, and that's hard for Conrad. Oh, does he love to get into him? He just loves it. You know he's itching, but he was restraining himself like I have never seen him restrain himself before. So by about 2 in the afternoon, this Bible scholar had discerned that Conrad had never been to college, never taken a Bible course, had never taken a Greek course, and never taken a Hebrew course. And he had degrees in Hebrew and Greek and had spent years teaching Greek. So after a while, he's starting, because he's fishing with Conrad. I know he's fishing, and Conrad's holding off real nice. And finally, he's pecking away, and Conrad sits there with a nice smile. He said, I have a problem with John 5:24. So I said, and I didn't even know, what was going on. I'm sitting over there talking to these other two guys, and all of a sudden, this sweet, dear old man jumps up and walks over and says, I'm going to give you a lesson, young man. I'm going to give you a lesson in Greek. And he goes and gives that verse in Greek. And Conrad sits there with a nice smile and gives every use in Greek and quotes every verse of that use in Greek in the entire New Testament. And then he quotes the chapter in Greek and sits there, and this guy turned red and threw us physically out of his house and told us never to come back. And I didn't even know what was going on. I was just standing there. We had a nice little talk with these other two preachers. The next thing I know, we're all out in the street, and this guy's in a screaming rage. All he did is just quote it in Greek. And I get out front, and I said, Conrad, what happened? He's sitting there. He lied in Greek. When they go to Greek, they're going to lie. Why do they Greekify? First thing he found out, that I had never taken Greek. Conrad taught himself. He doesn't forget. You take Greek in college, you're going to forget it. When you taught yourself Greek, you know it. He'll whip anybody up and down backside on Greek. He taught himself every last word out of a lexicon with nobody to help but just going through a dictionary and teaching himself a language. You ever try that? You gotta learn how to read this stuff first before you learn it, don't you? And I says, what'd he do? He conjugated the verb wrong. I said, why did he lose his cool? He says, simple. I'm supposed to come back with a standard comeback, and no one had ever hit him with John 5:24 before in his entire 80 years. And he was whammed to the wall, totally unprepared. And I says, you got it by surprise. He says, no, give him 20 years. He'd still be unprepared. His doctrine will not fit John 24, no matter whether he has 1,000 years to try to make it. The only thing... All right, we're here looking through, again, fraternal order to the police, the 5-pointed star, the sun ring, the sunburst. Here we show Ralph Nader reports, the truncated pyramid with the all-seeing eye and the balance scale, which is the religion of works. Good people go to heaven and bad people go to hell. Isn't that it? That's not the Christian faith. The Lord came to save sinners. He didn't come to save good people. He came to save bad ones, those who need a Savior. Machinist union, see the compass, a square, the sunburst, the 6-pointed star, and the emblem of the colors. And watch here. The International Association of Machinists, I am is Jehovah, the name of God. This is in Versailles, Louis XIV, the Catholic monarch of France. See here in his private altar, the all-seeing eye, the truncated pyramid, and the sunburst. This is in the Vatican. This is Peter. Did you know this is the fisherman Peter? Do you see him there? They kissed the toes right off of this piece of granite. Now, what is that sunburst behind his head? Pick up the Vatican literature. Know what it tells you? This is really a statue of Jupiter in which we converted it and call him Peter. The Vatican admits that this was the statue of Jupiter. You notice the nudity that comes into pagan religions. St. Thomas Aquinas. Time magazine. The sunburst. Frank Sinatra. Catholic mafioso receiving the Order of Malta. And who is bestowing this on this communist Catholic mafioso? Rothschild is given to him, and his best man is Spiro Agnew. There we go. Here's the Pope. This is the Pope speaking, about 10 or 12 years ago when he first came over to the United Nations, and he says, I give you sanction of the great principles that regulations between peoples should be regulated by reason, by justice, by law, by negotiation, not by force, not by violence, not by war, not by fear, not by deceit. So mote it be. Here is one of the great worshipful masters of the lodge speaking. Is the Pope a Jew? Yes. Way back. He is the leader of the Hellenic Pharisee cult. He is a Pharisee of the Pharisees. Is he a racial Jew? Who cares? Is he a spiritual Pharisee? Amen. Hardcore. He didn't get there if he wasn't. I'll guarantee you. Now watch something. Did he say that the relationship between people should be regulated by God's Word? By the declaration of an insolvable... Watch what he said. The relations between nations should be by reason, Gnosticism, by justice, by law, by negotiation, not by force, not by violence, not by war, not by fear. Nothing to do with God in there at all. All right? Notice the whole absence of that a little bit.
allow us to congratulate you on having had the wisdom to open this assembly to the young peoples, to the states which have recently attained independence and national freedom. Their presence in this hall is proof of the universality and magnanimity which inform the principles of this institution. So mote it be. You know what I mean by so mote it be? And every prayer in the lodge ends with, so mote it be. We all stamp our foot 3 times. All right? I wondered if they all stamped. I don't have the thing about it, whether all of those people and those delegates stamped in the United Nations when he gave the prayer end. Let's go to the Vatican. Here in the Vatican we have Baal's shaft, but this Baal's shaft is a particular one. This was the shaft of Nero, Emperor Nero's shaft, which came out of the Circus Maximus from across the river over near the Villa de Malta. Now, that shaft is a one-piece stone and was hauled across only 300 years ago and set up there between the female legs, that's what that is to represent. And we have around here all these small obelisks, and down here we have an avenue all the way to the river of obelisks on both sides, a whole avenue of obelisks. I don't know how many, there must be 40 of them. Big obelisks all the way down to the river. That looking down on the top of this, you'll see that this building is laid out in the shape of a goat's head. This shaft, Nero is the one who used Christians for torches in the gardens during his parties, as he put pitch on them and had them lit around his garden to light it up at night. He killed his own father, his own mother, his own wife, and his own brother, besides being accused of burning down Rome. Let's go into this humble preacher's little office. Here we see, back here the sunburst, and up 7 steps like all worshipful masters, sits the worshipful master with his crown on his head, the Dagon crown of the fish god. And on that crown it says, what is it? Deus Fidelis Deus, Vicarious Fidelis Deus, isn't it? Substitute Son of God. And if you add up the letters, which in Roman language, of course, are also numbers, you come up with 666. There's that humble preacher. Is he high and lifted up? Here is a meeting at the Villa de Malta, showing Don Antonio Rodriguez, diplomatic representative of Chile, one of the 34 nations recognized by the Knights III Roman headquarters as a sovereign state. The 900-year-old order of chivalry founded in Jerusalem before the Crusades. Wait a minute, who was in Jerusalem before the Crusades? The old man of the mountain. The Assassins. And what is this? This is one of the most ancient of the Masonic orders. And what was established there? What was established there was the Order of the True Rosy Cross, the Knights of the Rosicrucians, the Knights Templar, the Knights of Malta. And what do they hide behind? That they have hospitals and ambulance corps for the relief of refugees. The Shriners, those great paragons of morality, hide behind crippled children. Here we have an interesting man, a man named Allende, who was president of Chile, an open member of the Communist Party under discipline, who was a Roman Catholic and 33rd degree Scottish Rite. Now, isn't that an interesting combination? Here we have a good Mason, George Wallace. Right? Here, go whichever way you want. You got the same thing. Let's go back to look at Egypt a little bit, these caskets. Here is a casket, very elaborately done, beautifully preserved. And as we look at these caskets, we will see that these are not just a casket, but it is a scripture. This is by the way, this is the scripture right here of all pagan religions. We'll get to it in a minute if we have it right. There's Anubis, jackal god, the eagle of Baal, and so forth. But it's all over. We'll see these all on the reliefs, on the walls. And again, let me see if I have a better copy. We'll go back here. Hey, where'd that come from? All right. Well, we have this relief and another one, which is the same thing as on the casket. The same one's the last relief, only different drawings. These things are repeated everywhere in all the tombs and all the caskets. We'll look at it in just a minute. We'll look at this one. It may be a little easier to see is the only reason. It doesn't make any difference which one we have. Here's Osiris, supposedly, the sun god, with the crozier and the whip. The whip for punishment and the crozier for mercy of the shepherd. Here we have the lion, and whose grip one is laid in the newness of life. Here we have the souls that are waiting to be judged. Here as we have is the one now presently being judged, prepared by the Hierophant. Now, what does the person who's going to be judged do? He gives the grand hail sign. In the Second World War, I've got a lot of pictures of this. You see these German soldiers coming out with their hands behind their head, their hands up shaking and coming out board. Then you see the officers coming out, nicely dressed, with a smile. All the officers of all the officer corps of the world belong. In the Second World War, I've got a lot of pictures of this. You see these German soldiers coming out with their hands behind their head, their hands up shaking and coming out board. Then you see the officers coming out, nicely dressed, with a smile. All the officers of all the officer corps of the world belong to the Masonic orders, and that grand hail sign must be recognized no matter what the order. When those Nazis walked out there with that grand hail sign with that big smile on their face, they said, those dummies got slaughtered. But we're all in the club, boys. Those little privates are shaking in the boots. Those officers had no such problem. They were in what's called the Ring Knockers Club. Anyway, what's happened here? The balance scale. We keep seeing over and over again. All pagan religions are based on works. Good works outweighing bad works. What you do in this world is going to determine your eternal destiny. That the creature, by grace, through faith. Now, not of works. These religions, and here in the hand we'll always see the Ankh, the circle with the cross, the female, the male, the symbol of life, the symbol of Lucifer. You see all these male and female symbols today, and see the kids wearing the Ankhs around their necks. Ankh is a verb in the hieroglyphics. It is a verb of to live. All right? It is the verb of life. The bottom part is the male reproductive organ. The top is the female. Anyway, these works are written down, and these souls are being judged. And by the way, we should have Anubis, the jackal god. The jackal god, you see, in the Valley of the Dead has been ruled for 2,000 years by jackals, which roam around in the Valley of the Dead. It's the only thing that lives over there. All right, now we go and take a look here. This is in a Roman Catholic French newspaper, translation into English. And I'll just quote this. This is a translation in a French Catholic newspaper of a La Maison, the Masonic, French Masonic, an article in the French Masonic magazine, all right? Translated in English. You got, well, anyway, it comes out somewhere. We, for traditional Freemasons, are taking the liberty to paraphrase and transposing this word from a famous statesman, which we adopt as circumstances. Catholics, Greeks, Protestants, Israelites, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, freethinkers, free believers are among us mere Christian names. Our family name is Freemasonry. What they're saying is all of these aren't really anything. The real religion is Freemasonry. And behind each of these things, and notice what they have interesting here.
Catholics, Greeks, Protestants, Israelites, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, freethinkers, free believers are among us mere Christian names. That's true. Our family name is Freemasonry. That's true. Notice there's one religion missing in that list. The Christian religion. Do you notice that? They've got in there Catholics, that's not Christian. Greeks, that's not Christian. Protestants, that's not Christian. Israelites, that's not Christian. Muslims, that's not Christian. Hindus, not. Buddhists, not. Freethinkers, not. Free believers are not. They're right. All of those are the same thing. They all say that a creature by an act of will can reach divinity. As you do certain things, perform certain rites, have a certain prayers, pay certain monies, do certain good works, and your good works outweigh the bad, and you're going to go to heaven. Well, that is not what the Bible teaches, I'm afraid. Since Freemasons want all religions to have something in common, which will be considered more important than doctrine. By their doctrine we shall know. By doctrine. By every word of doctrine. These people are not interested in doctrine. This common something which will have to be experience. We're not going to give them doctrine. We'll give them experience. I know what I felt. I know I had an experience. And that is the religion based on it. An experience. Not on doctrine. A direct contact with divinity. This experience will be said to be more religious and more important than doctrine. What did Paul say? If an angel comes from heaven and preach any of the gospel hear and preach, how do I know what gospel is without doctrine? Shall be accursed. How am I going to tell? But by doctrine. Here we have the Sovereign Imperium of Mysteries, the Brotherhood of the Illuminati, the Order of the Illuminati, the Pre-Nicene Catholic Church, the Order of the True Rosy Cross, the Pre-Pansopic Rite of Mizraim, or Masonry, the Order of Rites of Mizraim, and the Charitable Order of San Raphael. This is the consortium of the mystery religions headquartered in England, and the only two places I know where you get their material is in London, England, at the Frosius Lucius, that's the fraternity of Lucifer, or Brotherhood of Lucifer, and their offices in the United Nations in New York. All right? Interesting where the places are. But anyway, let me read this. This light is kind of poor here. The Brotherhood of Illuminati. Maybe it's better over here. Maybe it'd be better if I got my glasses on. Can we turn off this front row of lights? We've got too much light on in here. That's our main trouble. You can't read it neither. Yeah, I can't. Somebody's gone to. There we go. You found something? There we go. Oh, boy, that helps an awful lot. The Brotherhood of Illuminati is universal in the true sense that we have no dogma, no creed, no fear, no false claims, no explanation of spiritual things, but seek to serve God and man by service. Sounds just like out of a blue book. The Birch Society, doesn't it? We make the claim that unless we serve man without the thought of creed, sect, race, or color, it is impossible to reach that state in which we would aspire, and we therefore invite all people to join us in us to work for the restoration of the true brotherhood. Remember, we're going to restore something else. Let's see how this true brotherhood, since brotherhood is a reality in nature, see how it starts out? Since brotherhood is a reality in nature, an assumption. Is it true? No, it is not. False assumption will lead you to a false conclusion. What's the first thing a Mason will tell you? Oh, we're all brothers. No, we're not. I'm not his brother, spiritually or physically. I deny that. We must seek this in the spiritual sphere, and to realize the concept that we must seek to reach the spiritual reality, the Christ consciousness, Christ reality, whether Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, within each and every one of us. We're going to reach the Christ consciousness, whether Buddhist, Hindu, or Muslim, in each and every one of us. Now, at first, that kind of seems a little strange, doesn't it? Until you understand what they mean by Christ consciousness. That means you discovering that you are God. You are Christ. Jehovah's Witnesses are like that one. Anyway, it is your discovery of your consciousness that you are the Christ. Let me go on to show you that this is true. No matter what is called themselves, no matter what religion or name they use for the living reality of God within, it always meant the same, the finding of the ever reality of God within. The goal that all true men who love truth, brotherhood, and God, the way of at-one-ment is by the study and the living of the wisdom of the Gnostics, the inner spiritual knowledge, the underlying of religions and philosophies. What are they saying? Where are the underlying religion? We are a philosophy. Gnostics. It is a religion that we have invented by our mind. And we have by our mind discovered we are God. Yes, there's a God and we're it. Poor creatures. What abysmal gods. The Frasius Lucius. Now, by the way, the Frasius Lucius used to be called the Brotherhood of Lucifer. In 1923, they decided they better change the name to the Frasius Lucius because some people kind of took that literally. Within the Frasius Lucius, you will be taken along the path. This path in 5 stages, which correspond to the Gnostic system of illumination, to that of the birth of the Christ within the human heart. You will then receive the first initiation, which will tend to open the doors of the soul to the influence of the Christ. Well, your first initiation is to open the doors to the influence of the Christ. Who is this Christ? Is this the person, Jesus of Nazareth, sitting at the right hand of the Father? He crucified, dead, buried, and resurrected in the flesh on the third day, sitting at the right hand of the Father bodily. Now, this is something entirely different. In the next initiation, but notice how they use the words. Notice the words you see that are used. Sound almost Christian, don't they? And the next initiation is that of baptism. Here we assist you to open the way between the astral and mental regions of being. The lower mind is then flooded with sound. Boy, we really have, we popped out, lost that one. Okay, flooded with the higher mind. And then it goes on. Oh boy, I'm going to have to find that one. I don't know where it dropped out. The other half of that. I'm sorry. Here's all that's left of the first Mormon temple in the way of Illinois. The sunburst and the great fields. All right, there's old Baal coming up. Poor Joseph Smith. You know, this guy, he only had third-grade education, and they gave him this novel, which was written in 1817. He gave to him, I think they really recopied it, put in the Bible verses, and came up with the Book of Mormon and handed him the whole thing. And this guy goes out to impress this religion. Now, a few things that are interesting about this Mormon religion, so-called, is that you can't get a good religion going without a martyr. So Joseph Smith gets out here to Illinois, and he and his brother Hiram, they get himself arrested by all the Masons and thrown into jail. But they are both worshipful masters, Scottish Rite. Joseph was worshipful master. Hiram was a member of the Scottish Rite Lodge. And they weren't worried at all because, after all, these guys are going to come to lynch them, happened to be all good Masons. And when they came, they gave the grant. By the way, the Masons smuggled in some pistols to them. Isn't that nice? So that when they came out there, the mob came, these guys are sitting there smiling, giving the grand hail sign both physically and verbally. Oh Lord my God, is there no help for the widow's son? Which every Mason must come to their aid. And while these guys are giving that, oh Lord my God, is there no help for the widow's son? They blew them in. And they said, well, they had guns and they were shooting. They smuggled the guns to them, then went down and blew the guys in. You see? Well, now you had martyrs. Now, Joseph Smith, according to Masonry, cannot be wrong in any prophecy because he was an apostle, infallible. Yet Joseph Smith says that he was taken in a vision to the moon and met the people in the moon who were almost all universally 6 feet tall and dressed as Quakers. That's in the Mormons' own newspapers and their own books. They haven't reprinted that since 1937. They dropped it out, but it still happens to be there. Now, according to the Mormon Church, the president of the Mormon Church at his inauguration said, if Joseph Smith in his prophecy was wrong on any part, Mormonism is a gigantic hoax. Well, he said it. And we can go, for example, there's a few interesting things about this Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith, of course, was a bigamist way before he got the revelation from God about bigamy. He got the revelation after he was a bigamist, not before. His second wife is an interesting person. Joseph Smith, or there was a man named Captain William Morgan. Captain Morgan, and this little book here is his little book, was a Mason, and he decided if Masonry was moral and good as he was told it was, then there was no harm in publishing the ritual. And if it was evil, then it was necessary to publish the ritual. So he did. He and another Mason named Miller, who published it, and William Morgan wrote it, 1826. Well, the Lodge took both these men into custody, and at the grand encampment of New York, with the governor, the senators, and the representatives of the state all present, as they had a trial. And they decided on death. Then at Niagara, Fort Niagara, where they had incarcerated these two men, and Miller escaped. Morgan didn't. They had a group, I believe, of 6 who drew lots for the actual execution. 3 of them took them out in a rowboat out to Niagara River, bound them up with chains, and shoved them over into the icy waters. About a year later, his body washed up on the shore in 1827, and a scandal broke loose nationwide, as which the nation has hardly ever heard one since. And the scandal was so bad over this murder, and the fact that all of these people were involved, not one was ever indicted or brought to trial. That would be interesting, wouldn't it, huh? Where are they going to find a judge? But the newspapers and the politicians of this country had to take a position, pro or anti-Mason. The churches took positions of pro or anti-Mason. And many of the churches will have anti-Mason clauses in them that stem from this time. The state of New Jersey outlawed any Mason from holding public office, since it would be criminal for them to do so, since they've already broken any oath of office before they have arrived. And things like this happened. The anti-Mason party was formed, and it almost won office when they found out that the leader of it, their candidate, happened to be a secret Mason. But the Masonic party finally did elect the president, the anti-Masonic party, in 1860. Didn't know that one, huh? The Republican Party is the anti-Mason party. It was renamed in 1856. All right? And every member of the cabinet was a Mason but 2, Stuart and Lincoln. And the night Lincoln was shot, Stuart was stabbed on the other side of town. That wasn't a lone assassin, was it? His throat was cut. Stuart was Secretary of State. Yeah, Masons had a little job doing it. And, by the way, the Secretary of War admitted his part in it. And Grant knew about it. He got out of town. All the boys were in on that show. I got to the point about this Captain William Morgan. Captain William Morgan was a married man. And know who his wife married after he died? Joseph Smith. The second wife of Joseph Smith is Captain William Morgan's wife. Isn't that a nice coincidence? Well, anyway. Here we find, I at a time went down to an encampment of the Klan on, what's the name of that mountain there?
Mountain, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta. There's a mountain there with all of the boys